Hello, it's me. It's me again, Rahul from the Battle Camp, and we're having another Battle Camp conversation today. And look, I always try to be really nice with the intros with my guests. And I was thinking, actually, I was having a piss a little while ago, and I was thinking, what am I going to say about Brian before I formally introduce him, even though he's sat here watching me do this. And all I can say is this. Like, if you guys have been watching my channel for a while, I have always told you guys how much I enjoyed the MMA beat. And watching the MMA beat is the first time I saw Brian pop on my screen, and I thought, bloody hell, this guy's quite funny, and I kind of like his takes. And then the MMA beat went away, and then it left a void in my life, and that void has now been filled by the Morning Kombat because I watch it 3 times a week, and I'm a big fan of Brian Campbell. I'm a big fan of your work, so thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, wow. Heck of an intro there. I appreciate it. That great to be here with you. And thanks for being a viewer. We definitely shout out to all you guys for sure.
Good stuff. All right, well, first and foremost, Brian, how are you doing? How are you? It's been a busy period for you watching Morning Kombat and the stuff that you've been up to.
Yeah, look, not like anyone else. I mean, it's been a crazy year, and we're into 2021, and there's some good news from a fight standpoint. Arenas opening up and life lessening a bit in the States, slowly but surely, vaccinations, all that. But I try to be as honest as possible with people, on my shows and stuff that it's snowy and icy and dark where I live in the States in Connecticut, and sometimes it's day by day with seasonal winter depression and all that. But look, I'm blessed. My family's great. The show's doing well. I've got some incredible companies behind me, Showtime, CBS. I'm doing a real fun fight series with NBC Sports that's going to relaunch again next week. So I could not be more blessed with all that. But like everybody else in terms of real life, sometimes it's hour by hour. But your boy BC today feeling good, feeling happy. So thank God for that.
Good, good. I'm glad to hear that, Brian. Okay, so like I was talking to Brian off air, guys, and I just kind of want to kind of cover off your journey because just from my point of view, I've seen you pop up in the MMA beat, and then I knew you were kind of doing podcasts and other bits and pieces. But the Morning Combat is where we reacquainted, and I became a more regular follower of your work. So take me back then. So how did you kind of what I know you kind of boxing is the first sport that you kind of had an interest in. So how did that begin for you?
Yeah, I had a pretty wide. I mean, everyone's journey to get to this point where there's so few jobs at the top is obviously different. There's no playbook to say follow this, and with the changing times, the digital and all that. But in my late 20s, I was lucky to sort of fulfill a long time dream, having grown up in Connecticut, 20 minutes outside of ESPN, to finally work at the four letters, the mothership, whatever you want to call it. And when you make that transformation and you get the job there, it's wild because half of you is like, I made it. I did it. This is all I ever wanted to do. And I don't care if I'm working third shift, covering whatever sport. I'm happy. And believe me, I worked third shift covering plenty of whatever sports. But you do get to a point where it's also just a job too. And you sort of have to ask yourself and look in the mirror, what do I want? What do I want to do? I've got this great opportunity. What do I want to do with my career? So through many a long nights, working till 3, 4 a.m. for no money, at times no benefits, holidays, weekends, all the time. I started to figure out that the fight sports really move me. They always have, whether it's boxing as a kid, pro wrestling, and then obviously when the mixed martial arts started in the 90s with the UFC. I mean, I was having pay-per-view parties in high school for UFC 5, 6, and 7 like everyone else. So I started to just find opportunities within ESPN that I could within my own departments to be the fight guy, to be the combat guy. And what happened after that was a fairly meteoric rise, right around 2010, 2011 to advance through the ranks at ESPN, get a job as sort of the backup combat sports editor, working on the boxing page, working on the mixed martial arts page, and then get to slowly do my thing within that, right? Stories here and there, interview fighters as they come through to Bristol, Connecticut, because there's many times a fighter's coming through and none of the regular sports people know what it is. Hey, anybody here with a shirt and tie want to sit down and talk to this fighter? You can get opportunities being in the right place at the right time with the right attitude. And I got many of those. And certainly boxing was my first I guess, form of quasi national notoriety. I was going to fights in 2011, writing feature stories here and there, doing some cool stuff, but I chipped away at MMA as well. And a few years later, I may not have been making money to support my family. I may not have been working great hours, but ESPN did provide me with a lot of on-the-job training to figure out who I was going to be in this business. It started in 2013 with a digital show I did for ESPN called Making the Rounds, where I was the a boxing co-host of a once a week interview and news show, and that sort of, gave me the confidence that, man, if I work at this, I don't know how to get there. And
Mhm.
some days today, even there's things I want to do. There's dreams I have in my career. I don't know how to get there. I mean, maybe I'm not that smart. Maybe I don't have the same vision and dreams and goals as others, but I've learned through hard work that if you just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and you don't back down, you may end up getting there. And I was lucky to find that. And, through certain shifts, I became the full-time, ESPN MMA editor around 2016. At that time, I got a new boss who said, "Why don't you start traveling to the fights with Brett Okamoto? Why don't you become our columnist after the big McGregor fights?" And suddenly I've got front page stories on ESPN.com. Yet again, I'm barely making enough money to pay rent. So a lot of on the job apprenticeship for no pay and opportunity. And it kind of all culminated, even though I'd been on TV on ESPN for boxing, and even though I've written some good things in boxing and MMA, it was 2017 that I got hired full time at CBS Sports. No more editing, no more, crap pay, no more. Maybe we'll promote you one of these days. I got the real thing, the real job. I was covering boxing, mixed martial arts, and pro wrestling at the highest level full time, which is a very rare opportunity. And since that point, and since some changes I made mindset wise, confidence wise, the phone doesn't stop ringing. And I don't sit here to tell you that in a braggadocious way. I tell you that in a way that, like, when you figure yourself out, when you figure out how to be the best version of you, and you just keep going and you keep going until the phone stops, ringing. And it's still ringing a lot right now. So I'm very blessed and very lucky. And while a lot of MMA fans are maybe finding me out for the first time through the MMA beat in 2018, which, evolved through my relationship with Luke into Morning Kombat today. I've certainly been around MMA, UFC for decades, and it's amazingly fun to be where I am today.
Okay, cool. So you basically covered off everything that I wanted to cover off. So I'm gonna try and get
Oh
into.
yeah, sorry, I was
Yeah.
being very macro, but if you got micro questions, I got stories. Believe me.
Yeah. So starting off at ESPN, right? So you mentioned that you were kind of covering random sports and this, that, and the other. So how did you kind of make that first step into journalism, reporting, whatever the technical term for it is?
Yeah, good question. I was one of those, diehard sports fans as a kid, statistical memorizer, nerd guy who could sit in a room full of people at the cafeteria and not get stumped on sports trivia for hours, right?
Mhm.
And, I wasn't that great of an athlete. And sometimes through that, you just want to be a part of what's going on. I became the manager of the high school baseball and basketball teams, and, played sports in the rec leagues myself. But through that, you get a relationship with the newspaper folks, and you start to say, maybe this is what I want to do. So I got some great opportunities while still in high school to keep score for the local newspaper. That turned into writing opportunities. That turned into going to college for journalism. And while it was a misguided decision at the time, it also led to me dropping out of college to get full time into the writing business, working for newspapers in Connecticut, small ones, just cutting my chops. And I certainly did hit a quarter life crisis dead end in that business where, covering high school football was a lot of fun, but, it wasn't paying, and I really wasn't going anywhere in life, where I sort of said, what the heck am I going to do? And I even took a job. It's crazy to see where I am today at age 42, yet I can sit here and tell you at 27, I was a full-time, manager in a factory in my hometown, which is the truth. It was a transitional period where I'm just sort of figuring out what I want to do. But I got very lucky, as I mentioned, to get a part-time job at ESPN 2005. It was a seasonal job. It was going to go away in a few months. So there was a lot of pressure that if you didn't impress, you were going to go away too. And at that point, it was a technical job, like tech support, Q&A, like stuff that I know nothing about. Working nights. The boss that I reported to was working in another state, not returning my calls or emails. And, I got lucky that there was a department next to mine where a lot of was going on. A lot of cool stuff was going on. So I just kept volunteering, kept trying to, make a splash, and eventually got lucky to get hooked up there full time. But, even from 2005 to 2012, I'm still working all different sports at ESPN, crap hours, covering all the stuff, front page editor, all, video manager, all these really awful jobs that I say awful because it wasn't what I wanted to do,
Mm,
but I certainly look back and realize how the cross training element in that to really help me develop, who I wanted to be and who I didn't want to be, which I think a lot of times, I mean, look, I'm in such a great position in life, and I'm blessed, and I don't take it for granted, where I do get the LinkedIn email or the whatever. Hey, BC, how can I follow the path? I'm a college senior or whatever, and I just want to be, and I don't know. I don't have an answer. I mean, I don't know. I'm going to tell you, go out there and make a lot of mistakes and figure out first who you don't want to be and who you aren't. And then you can get closer to figuring out exactly who you actually are. And then, like I said, once you get there, once you get out of your own way and you figure that out, the world has a way of opening up doors for you. So I did put in, so much blood, sweat, and tears at ESPN. Like I mentioned, no pay, no love, no respect, little opportunity, and clawed to get to where I am now.
All right, so talk to me a little bit about that side of things, because you've mentioned it twice now. Once you get out your own way, and just watching Morning Kombat, both you and Luke, great guy, never met him, but both of you two both do say about how you kind of had that kind of resentment almost towards working in the media, covering the sport. What is that? Where did that come from? Like,
Yeah, it's a good question. And for me, it's not really, it's not a resentment. I mean, do I try to be like I mean, I guess the best example is if we all watch Michael Jordan in the Last Dance documentary last year. You see a guy who even today retired, he's still holding grudges. He's still motivated by the people who said he couldn't do it. So I've certainly got a lot of that helps fuel you and helps you get over certain hurdles. Because look, you're going to get tested anytime you find something you love in life or something you want to do. You're going to get tested right away with something really hard that's going to test whether you do really want
yeah.
this, and I had a lot of that. I had times at ESPN where I had a little success. I was a writer. I was decent on camera. I had a couple, opportunities, but I went to the TV execs at one point in like 2014 and said, look, I think I could do a lot more for you. And they sort of said, um, no, we don't have we can't use you. You don't really have a position. It's like in basketball, which is the best equivalent I can say. It's like, somebody who's, plays like a power forward but has the size of a small forward. You're not a newsbreaker, which is something I never really was into, didn't want to chase down. And they're like, you're not an ex-fighter or ex-trainer. We really can't sell you to the public. And I think that was a really important detour for me. And look, that's a lot, that's a turning point where I think a lot of people end up saying, somebody told me I can't do my dream,
Mm,
so I think they're right. I got to go figure something else out. And while I didn't have as definitive an attitude about it at the time, like, I'm going to show you, I did realize that this was one person's opinion and that I disagreed and that I think there's another role out there, or forget role. I think just if I keep being me and figure out who I am, there's there's a place, there's a spot for me. And just, fast forward a little bit, it was 5, 6 months later that same guy called me up and said, hey, somebody can't make it this weekend. Can you come on TV and fill in? So, I had to decide that wasn't going to stop me, but I never forgot that. And I think even through having success, being on TV on ESPN, a sideline reporter for Friday Night Fights, I appeared on Sports Center breaking down fights. I had some cool opportunities. I still didn't know who I was. I'm still trying to be, fake Jim Lampley is what I call it. In the boxing business, HBO play-by-play guy Jim Lampley was like the gold standard of the talks, speaking the perfect English, the educated, emotional man who can sit
did
in front of the
boxing,
camera.
right? He did boxing matches.
Yeah, he was a
Yeah,
boxing
yeah, so,
play-by-play
yeah.
guy. He's the gold standard. And every time I'm on camera, I was trying to be poor homeless man's Jim Lampley. And that's not going to work because that's not me. And it took me through even getting hired full-time at CBS Sports and getting to a level where people looked at you and said, you're legit, you're having success, you're this and you're that, before I realized I'm kind of being a fraud, right? They're not a fraud, but I don't even know who I am. And I look back, there's some cool moments. And again, like, you can take these moments as things that can deter you or take them as motivation, where I got a few TV tryouts at ESPN back in the day and I did okay, right? Looking back, pretty horrible, but I did okay for the moment. And I come back into the office and you get the people that are like, hey man, it was awesome seeing you on there, and your mom's texting you
Mhm.
saying, this is great. And, everyone's like, this is dream come true. But if you've got a couple honest people in your life, and I did, luckily, some coworkers who sat me down and said, hey, look, that was cool seeing you on TV. but that wasn't you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, that's not the guy who comes into the newsroom every night, fired up, jazzed up, swinging his fist, going crazy, saying, bro, you got to see this fight this weekend. It's this guy against this guy, and they're crazy, and they're going to brawl, and it's going to be awesome. And I remember telling this guy, like, you don't understand. You can't be that. Nobody wants that, you know? And I look and I thought that moment haunted me for years. I was actually mad at that guy for having the gall back then to be like, you know, hey, you did okay, but you know, you could do a lot better.
Mm.
But he was right. I could be me, right? I could do a lot better. I can be me. And you know, it wasn't even until I was working at CBS Sports and things were going should have been going great. I bought my first house, you know, I finally got to the supposed mountaintop, but working from home for the first time, a long winter, I was pretty depressed, you know. It was a change. I went from being in an office, ESPN campus for 12 years and seeing, you know, celebrities every day to just kind of sitting in my basement in my pajamas doing the same thing over and over again. And it forced me to kind of come face to face with like,
Mm.
how do I get better, but how do I get happier? How do I figure out like what I'm really doing here? How do I unlock, you know, that same conversation just haunted me. And I like to tell that story a lot because, you know, even at that level of success, I still didn't really get how to do this. And it kind of took uh through you know, Mauro Ranallo, the great combat sports analyst,
Yep.
who I've got a poster of him on the wall. Showtime put out an excellent documentary
Oh,
on
yeah,
his mental
about
health
his,
journey. I spent a day with him in New York City interviewing him. And I actually, some of the words that he echoed like stayed in my head. I'm thinking, you know, maybe I'm not being as honest with myself about my own, you know, anxiety or stuff that I thought was very small in my life, little challenges, but hey, everybody's got challenges. And I sought out a therapist. I started taking some low dose meds and something changed in me, something unlocked in me where every time I got on the camera after that, I just stopped caring. I didn't obsess and watch the film 4,000 times afterwards and cringe at my every mistake and nervous about how I'm going to do better. And, you know, ahead of each opportunity, I wasn't trying to memorize words. What I was just turn on the camera. We're going live and I'm just going to be me. And sometimes that meant towing the line, telling crappy jokes, maybe making an inappropriate reference to see what happens, you know, just being kind of the me who, when I'm around my high school friends, lights up like a Christmas tree. When I'm around my, you know, neighbors just having a beer outside is just like, bro, you know?
mm.
And it turned out there was a place for that. And I'm lucky, you know, of the evolution of digital journalism and maybe even some of the things that Bill Simmons started in terms of, you know, being less sophisticated. You know, we're no longer Jim Lampley in a tux trying to speak the dictionary to you, but how about just a dude who loves sports and is super excited? And I may not break news and I may not have the expertise of having rolled on a jujitsu mat for 20 years, but I know my stuff. And I'm really excited and passionate about this game. And once that started clicking, it turns out that's a monetized skill. You can do pretty
Yeah.
well with that, and I'm really thankful to have gotten there because I do remember what it's like to, and this is before even getting into the business. You know, being in my 20s, living in a crappy apartment, working the dead end job, and saying there's something in here, and I know it, but I have no idea how to get it out. And I think that, you know, there's some of that in all of us, right? There's some of that in all of us, you know,
In
and
me
you may
right
even
now,
have,
mate. It's in me right now.
you know, and you may even have a great day job
Yeah.
if you do it different, and it may pay you well, and it may be respectable, and you may have worked hard to get there, but it may not make you happy every day when you put your head on the pillow.
Yeah.
And I think that there was something there that happened to me that I try to encourage as many other people that you know, get out of your own way and let it happen, and you'd be surprised what you're capable of.
I think you'd be surprised. All right, so here's a question then. So during that period where kind of you were unsure in terms of what it is that you wanted or what you were trying to be, is kind of how you put it. Were you finding it difficult to kind of reconcile the personality that you portray kind of now on Morning Combat or what we saw on MMA Beat, and trying to have that sort of enthusiasm and kind of those kind of flavors, but on a more kind of mainstream, rigid broadcast format on telly, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah, the weird thing is that even though I came up to get to where I am now in a very backdoor, I like to say, way, a college dropout, scratched and clawed, wasn't the favored guy at any really point. At the same time, though, I did come up through ESPN, right? So it's like I did come up in the major leagues, just in the back corner of the campus that nobody even knew what was going on, right? But being on there, it's very rigid in PC, and very much like, I mean, even at the lowest levels, of things you can't say, and things that you shouldn't say, and whether that's certain levels of decency or certain corporate relationships you can't negatively, implode by giving the truth. And I think even that extended to when I did make some inroads in boxing or in MMA. Let me explain it to you like this. I get a lot of texts from people in my life that are, quasi fight fans. Let's say some local dad, his kid's on the same soccer team as your kid. And he's like, oh, hey, dude, I saw a commercial for that fight. Who's going to win this, bro? And I'd remember that I would text back or say back when I see him in person, a very different breakdown of what I would say on camera. On camera, I'd be afraid not to make anybody mad, afraid not to offend the relationships between promoters and networks, and really just try to go like, well, it's going to be difficult for this fighter. Yet over text, I'd be like, nah, bro, this guy's a quitter. This guy's going to do this to him. This is whatever. And I'm not saying that there isn't a level of decency that you shouldn't hold back. You know what I mean? And also, you don't want a fighter to see you in person and be like, oh, you're calling me a quitter. But you get my overall point of just going, what if I just unlock the real me? So I had certainly an extra level of latitude at CBS compared to ESPN to do that. But what I found by doing that, by just releasing the real me, is that there's a level of authenticity in that not only people want, but it's looked at as more legitimate than when you're trying to just be, the next Jim Lampley, the next whatever. When you're trying to be a homeless poor man's version of something that's already good, you're going to be just that, right? That, there were so many times that I was trying to be just good enough to belong. When you and there's something wrong in that thinking. When you are living your life, it's like in sports, when you're playing prevent defense, you're not playing to win, you're playing not to lose. When you are playing just to not get exposed, right? Not get exposed that I'm not some serious newsbreaker, that I don't have this certain expertise. You're not promoting what it is you do have, and for me, it just turns out I got passion, and I got crappy dad jokes, and I got a couple other things. But now that I'm leaning into those things, and I'm being honest, and I'm just telling it like it is. And I think the MMA beat, and I'm glad you brought that up, in almost a weird experiment to me. I got an opportunity to be on there once, good friends with Chuck Mindenhall. He lives in Connecticut. And, he said, hey, we got an open seat. Would you be willing to come down to New York and sit in on an episode? Hey, cool opportunity, man. I'd love to. At that time, I'm thinking, look, it paid, but it paid, whatever. This is bonus. This is free money. This is a can't lose situation. What if I just went on there on that set and just went for it? What if I just didn't care, right? I'm not gonna be rude to anybody. I'm not gonna talk over anybody, but I'm just gonna be me, on steroids, me dial it up to 12. And there was something that happened there, transactionally. We're certainly, a lot of people are like, who's this a-hole? Who's this loser? But it was also me just going like, I'm going to dial that up all the way and see what happens. And that was a very integral life experiment that sort of showed me that, first of all, not everybody's going to love you anyway. But second of all, that's the very best that I can be. Now it's a spicy version of me, but that's the very best I can be. And from that point on, man, I haven't stopped. So it's cool.
Quick question around that then. So when you first made your first appearance on MMA Beat, was that once kind of the NWO had kind of Ariel had left and split up and whatnot, or yeah?
Yes, Ariel had left. There was no one living in the New York area of the old regulars who used to be on that show. And Luke had taken over the controls. And I had known Luke, by the way, in passing he always tells a story. We ran into each other at a few Mayweather fights in Vegas in previous years. And we respected each other, maybe would tweet at each other from time to time, but no, friendship or anything beyond that. But I thought it was a cool chance, man. They were kind of retooling their regular lineup, but you still had Chuck there. You had Luke, you had Danny Segura, you had Phoenix, whatever. And I just thought to myself, like, what if I, what if I just blew that up? What if I just went in there? I thought at times that show had been a little bit too stale for my liking, even when the A-team run had gone through there. And, to some people, as I found out, which is why Luke and I are such a good yin and yang, some people, man, they just want Luke's full on serious technical breakdown of who's going to win and why. And I respect that. Right. But I thought that show historically had been a little bit too stale and, wannabe sports reporters, which I get is sort of the model of what it is. But yeah, man, I flipped the table upside down and just went in there and did it. And, I like to joke around with Chuck is that him and I took the subway back together after that episode. And I was like, man, did you see Luke's face? I guess I won't be asked back after this one. So it was a good experiment. I guess I'll cash one check from it.
I'll tell you what, Chuck's my guy. I'm going to be honest with you. I've asked him twice now and he just read my message and not replied, but I'm going to get him one of these days, man. He's always been my favorite. Like every time I saw him on MMA Beat, I just liked his perspective. And it's not that I always agreed with him. It was just the way he put his sentences together. I just thought he's like an uncle that just knows more than you about everything.
Yeah. He's got a beautiful way of presenting an opinion that's close to the one you have, but more educated and usually involves something that you didn't think about. And you're like, damn, I should have said that. I should have thought.
And it seems so obvious once you said it, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I'm a big fan of his. So actually, talking about your style and dialing it all the way up, one of the things that I noticed about you is the inclusion of random lyrics while you're making your point. How, do you pre-write these or do you practice these before bed every night or something? How do you come up with that?
It comes off the dome. I mean, like once in a while, will I, run into a 90s song on the radio and be like, oh man, that lyric, I forgot. That'd be great for the show. And it's sort of lingering in my head. But no, I mean, I guess some of us have, we all have some odd party favor and skill. I guess I just have a skill that in the flow of conversation, I can hear something that instantly reminds me, I can instantly place that phrase in a song and follow up with the lyric right after it. So it's certainly been a little thing that I developed my last full year at ESPN in 2016. I had a great opportunity to be on the Cheap Heat Pro Wrestling podcast. That's a major podcast in the States. It was Peter Rosenberg, David Shoemaker, pro wrestling, journalists, sort of the coolest elite guys that you can have. And there was a transitional period like Ariel leaving the MMA Beat where David Shoemaker left to follow Bill Simmons. And I got an opportunity to fill in one time. And it was similar to that one time on the MMA Beat. And I just said, I'm going to go in there guns blazing. And Peter Rosenberg, the co-host, is morning DJ in New York City with a very famous hip hop station. So I kind of just started slinging in some 90s hip hop lyrics in between the analysis. And it was just a shtick that worked and it flowed really well. So it was sort of inevitable that I would bring that to, MMA Beat and then now on Morning Kombat. And not everybody loves it. And I try not to lean on it. I don't even think they have the 90s counter anymore on the show. But it, it certainly was a good introduction to what you're going to get from this weirdo if you tune in.
So just going back, because obviously you mentioned earlier on in our conversation about the fact that wrestling is something that you covered with CBS. So personally, I was a huge, massive fan. I've got the Ultimate Warrior behind me. I don't know if you've seen it. So I'm a big fan of wrestling, and I'm not anymore. I can't remember the last time I actually watched Raw and SmackDown and whatnot. But I was a huge wrestling fan, and that moved into boxing and then MMA kind of after the Attitude Era. So is that something you still follow with a passion, wrestling?
Unfortunately, this calendar year and the last one, I have to say no, but I've had such a, when Harry met Sally type relationship to it, like a lot of people have, where, in the 80s, I was die hard. And then I thought it was the lamest thing ever. And then in the mid 90s, the Monday Night Wars, the NWO, I was die hard. And then it got lame again. And I've been in and out for years. But what happened was in 2016, I was at ESPN and, I went back to a wrestling show. Somebody had free tickets and I was like, man, I have not experienced this in a long time. And I fell back in love with the athleticism, the storytelling, all that. And I said, there are elements to it now that's way better than the glory days, certain elements to it, not the storytelling, but some of the overall presentation. And, I'm very proud to sort of say that I petitioned to the heads of ESPN.com. I think there's a lane where we could cover this, and while the vision never turned out the way I envisioned it, and I ended up leaving the company within a year anyway. I'm proud to say that when they launched, a couple of months later, suddenly they launched a pro wrestling page, and I was sort of the guy for a short period of time and was doing the podcast and doing all that. So that period through my first couple of years at CBS, when I was a diehard journalist and watcher of it, I got some of the coolest experiences that I ever could have had. Not only was I back into it on a full-time level, but going to WrestleMania, going to the Royal Rumble, going backstage to interview, Randy Orton in the locker room and seeing, I mean, it's just, there's just moments I had that are just insane to the fandom. I stopped covering it in early 2020 because you know, I was better needed in MMA and boxing, specifically with UFC, just, you know, having such a great run. There was a lot more I should have been doing at CBS, so I left it. But I haven't been back yet. I'm still sort of sore at the McMahon family for how bad the booking became in 2018, and I haven't let that go. But I have seen some AEW and have loved what I've seen. And certainly I had a run with New Japan Pro Wrestling where I realized that if they can figure it out, meaning not the McMahons, the rest of the world, and they can get together and they can put out a product that feels like the 90s again, I might get hooked again. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, see, I record it. Like I record Raw, SmackDown, AEW every week, but I never watch it. Just in case something happens and I see on Twitter, oh shit, he made a comeback. So you know, I check it out, but nothing cool like that really ever happened. So I never watch it. But yeah. Going back to then your kind of the start of your relationship with Luke, because I kind of want to talk about how the Morning Kombat kind of started and how all of that came about. So obviously Luke was still at MMA fighting for a period, and then you know he announced that he's leaving. I actually made a video about the fact that Luke's leaving MMA Beat. This is back in when it happened.
I see that. I saw that one actually.
Yeah, because I'm a fan, man. I was actually quite down about the end of an era at MMA.
Was that you who made the is Ariel and Luke beefing video
that
has
a
million hits?
Yeah.
I've seen that. I've seen your face before. Okay, I got it.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't realize you'd seen it. Okay, cool. Yeah, so those are my most popular videos as it goes. That's why I'm really interested in you guys. You're like I'm trying to get the gossip of the MMA journalist world. It's quite geeky to be honest, but yeah, that's me. Yeah, go on. So that kind of relationship, how did that kind of go from MMA Beat, you getting on the subway saying, I don't think that guy is going to want me back again, to then, you know, kind of being good friends with him? And
well, let me just take you back. You know, being at ESPN and hitting some certain, you know, dead ends, 2014, 2015, where people said you're not traditional, right? There's no real room for you. I really started thinking that, you know, there's got to be some way I can take my corny jokes and my passion and my sort of bro, you know, attitude of, you know, I may not be a buttoned up reporter, but I'm that guy that you want to sit next to on the couch. There's got to be a way I could do a PTI of boxing or MMA or something. So I think I had cool opportunities along the way that were little tryouts of that. In 2015, Bill Simmons and Grantland decided they wanted the boxing podcast. It was Mayweather Pacquiao season. It was a big deal. So my good buddy Rafe Bartholomew, who was an editor there, we got an opportunity to do a Grantland boxing podcast, and it was so much fun. And I thought it was hip and different. That led to me getting the chance on Cheap Heat with Peter Rosenberg and Stat Guy Greg, where I felt like we were doing something hip and fun and different. And I was happy to bring that, like I said, to the MMA Beat and find out that it started to actually work. Luke wasn't mad, it turned out, at me. In fact, oddly, he sort of respected that I was the only one on the panel really challenging him, or really, let's say, not backing down when his look, let's be honest, right? If you don't know Luke and you don't like him, he's kind of a blowhard, kind of an arrogant dude. I love him like a brother, but that's going to scare people not to bring their best, or anger people that they don't, why do I want to work with this guy? I mean, like, it could do a lot of things, right? Yeah. Luke, I have to believe that Luke grew up playing toys alone, right? I don't know if he shares so well, despite our MK success. But I was realizing that we had this chemistry that not only could it entertain, but again, like the chemistry, you have to really, I've been paired with different people and different podcasts and stuff. And, you know, I mean, Brett Okamoto and I did an ESPN one that was so much fun. I've had different hosts and stuff, but I've had some bad pairings too. And there's something about certainly chemistry. When you know you have it, you gotta go for it. It's like, it's special. Just get out of the way and let it just be itself. Right. I think that's why Luke and I can do these ridiculous room service diaries and just turn on the camera and have no plan or script. And it's just us. So that I knew we had that, but you have to respect and believe and trust your co-host, like, to the nth degree. And right away, I just realized that, like, there's no bullshit in Luke. He'll tell you straight up what he feels. And despite maybe certain viewers, because he blocks them on Twitter thinking he's got thin skin, the guy's got insanely thick skin. I've got really thick skin. I mean, come on. I mean, look, you know, I couldn't be Luke's co-host if I didn't, right? You know, I can turn any insult into a joke. So I started thinking, look, yeah, man, this would be fun. And I think I pitched to Luke. Now he tells a different origin story, almost like we're some married couple who argues over who fell in love with the other first. But I did pitch to Luke this idea. I said, look, dude, He behind the scenes, maybe I'd been on the MMA Beat for 5-6 episodes, and he said behind the scenes to me, look, I don't want to be Ariel's follower, predecessor. You know, like what he did was great. I don't want to just do what he did. Not only is it not fit my skill set, but it's not original. It's not me, right? And I respected that. So I said, look, here's what I think you need to do. I think you need a 2-man show, a PTI. And I did pitch to him, you need somebody like a Brendan Schaub, right? And if you think about like Ariel in DC now, it's the host and the fighter, and it works. You know, it's like that. I said, maybe like you and a Brendan Schaub. Now, was I sort of strategically thinking, man, I think I could fill that role great?
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
but
That would be dicey with just Brendan shoving in there.
yeah, but I wasn't sort of saying, hey, Luke, you and me, let's do it. But I'm happy to say that I think through some of our success in that short period MMA Beat, Luke started to think, man, maybe I have something here with this guy too. So he said to me, look, my contract's coming up at MMA Fighting. I'd like to present to them a reimagination of what we do, blow everything up. And I think you and I would make a great 2-man show. And he's like, I think that's it. And I said, bro, forget that I already pitched this to you months ago. I don't care. I think you're right. Let's do it. So we did go to the brass there, and full disclosure, we hadn't signed a contract, but we were pretty close to launching what kind of became Morning Kombat on Showtime and now CBS on MMA Fighting. There was a chance meeting between Luke and somebody from Showtime. I think he literally ran into a guy on a subway one day, and that guy said, hey, are you Luke Thomas? People have been telling me I should talk to you. And that same guy, by the way, I sat down with him a year earlier before I'd even been on the MMA Beat and said, hey, have you talked to Luke Thomas? I think he'd be great. I think, you know, he's really good at this stuff. You could probably use him very well. So look, it came quick. And Showtime basically said, have you signed a contract with them? Because we think that idea would be great. And, you know, and no disrespect to MMA Fighting, I had a good run there, but I also think Luke was looking to take his career to another level as well. And, you know, we signed with Showtime, and they could not have been more on pace with our vision, with our style, with our everything. And there's so many cool things about the show now that we have. And now we also have the logistics and backing of CBS Sports under the Viacom CBS banner. So, you know, we are blessed beyond belief. But Showtime originally bought in, they had the resources, and every time I do something on air that you might go, ooh, BC, that was a little too far, right? I've walked off set a few times or off camera and said to myself, maybe that was a little too far. And every single time those guys were like, that was great. We'd love to see that every time. So I think, you know, they motivated me to kind of push it and say, we could have a lot of fun with this show, along with doing something that no one's really doing, which is covering these two sports together kind of simultaneously. Although obviously we do more MMA, it garners more attention. Luke's large fan base is very MMA heavy. In fact, most of them would like if we didn't talk about boxing at all, but that's a conversation for another day. But, you know, we signed quick. I had already been doing probably about a year's worth of just very entry level stuff with Showtime. They'd send me to fights for boxing. I'd, you know, be a talking head on the weigh-in show, or I'd, you know, sit at the desk above the arena on the undercard show or whatever, and get some cool opportunities. So I think it made a lot of sense for them to bring in a guy with a big MMA audience and a background and an expertise, who, oh, by the way, also used to cover boxing at times too. And as you see now, it's been the perfect marriage. I never would have guessed when we launched in July of 2019, that less than a year later, we would be Luke would have his contract bought out essentially at Sirius by Showtime and CBS, and that we'd, you know, go to the point now where I say it as a joke, but we're MK all day, nearly every day. And it's wild, man. It's a wild turn of events for us to get this far. I'd like our audience to grow, but it's grown pretty damn high. I mean, we're at 80,000 YouTube subscribers. You know?
Yeah.
So I'm incredibly pleased, and like Luke and I say a lot, certain things have worked, the room service diaries, these weird documentaries we do, but once we can get back to the fights and figure out what our game plan is going to be for fight week coverage on the ground, I think we can take MK to a whole nother level, and I'm really excited about it.
So that's actually something that I wanted to touch on. So firstly, obviously COVID. So you guys are both doing the show remotely. So if COVID had never have happened, would that have been a show that you both did on the desk in person, going back to back, basically? covering
It's
whatever you
weird
want.
because, people know from Luke's MMA fighting days that traveling from DC to New York twice a week was killing him, right?
Mhm.
And that's not an easy commute. So I don't know where we would be so what we benefited from with COVID was, I think, that we were ahead of the game in terms of our competitors from the standpoint of Malka and Showtime technologically figuring out how we can still do it from home and still do it at a really high level. And I think that helped us a lot. And I'm gonna be honest with you, that was the turning point in CBS saying, let's buy in and let's buy in now. I mean, when I first heard that CBS was ready, I'm like, during the quarantine, you're ready? And they were like, yeah, you guys have shown us that maybe Luke doesn't have to move to New York. Maybe, because there was a short period before the quarantine where CBS thought, could we pick up Luke? Could we move this show full time to the Stamford, Connecticut CBS studios? Could Luke move north? Maybe me move south a little and we make it work. And I think COVID showed that we can do it remote. I think there is going to be a future for us back in the bomb shelter once COVID ends, at least once a week. But it's weird to think, would we have expanded so quickly without this? I'm not sure. I mean, we would have had a chance to be at a lot more fights for sure, but
Yeah.
we definitely benefited, as did a lot of people in MMA, when that period, when it's why it's funny that Dana White in the UFC put me as one of the biggest chief villains in that smack talk video against journalists, because I've benefited incredibly and have been outspoken about it because Dana was so brash to get the sport back on. I mean, there was 3 months there where MMA was the only story on CBS Sports HQ, our live streaming network, and I was able to benefit from that. So yeah, it's crazy that the timing of it all, but in the end, the timing has been perfect.
Mm. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it, and I don't feel like the show misses anything with you two not being in the same room, sort of thing. You kind of bounce off each other quite well. So yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
we've figured that out. But one thing that we talk about a lot and talk about on air a lot is when we do get back together, these rare reunions, whether it be at Mohegan Sun for a Showtime event or at the bomb shelter for a big fight. The in the room chemistry, it's next level. So that is hard through a camera to reproduce with a delay and a lag and all that. But yeah, we've come a long way. I wouldn't have guessed that the show could work 3 days a week remotely. I'll tell you that. I would never have guessed that.
So just a quick question on the actual show then. So obviously, like you say, 3 days a week, you have usually 5 topics that you like to discuss right off the bat. Then kind of the show finishes with different kind of, the wheel on the Friday and DMs from the donks and whatnot. So those topics, like, do you guys decide amongst yourselves, you and Luke, and say, right, okay, this is the 5, these are the things that I'd like to talk about. How does that work?
Yeah, we still try to keep the Monday show, which is the reaction show to the weekend, as sort
Yep.
of like the show. And I think Luke and I exclusively alone meet. Sunday, we usually have a call or an email text chain to figure that out. But we do have with the merger with CBS, we got a great producer in CBS Sports named Mikey Mormile, who helps us sort of fill in the gaps on the Wednesday and Friday shows. And it's a collective process between the three of us. But yeah, it's certainly a team effort, despite all the producer credit jokes from Luke of how we present the show. And look, I'm really happy that some of the more bizarre stuff, the have you seen this shit, I'm really happy that it hit, because part of the hidden joke is that Luke did not see a home for that segment, did not like the idea, did not think it was going to work, did not like the idea of the wheel of death or whatever the hell we're doing. And he's come around that we've been able to pull it off. So.
Yeah, that's the thing. That have you seen this shit? Because I've got YouTube Premium, right? So I just listen to it as I'm going for a walk or whatever. The amount of time I have to get my phone out of my pocket to actually watch what you guys are talking about. But it's I do enjoy it. I do enjoy just Luke's same old reaction to it. Can you answer a question? Do you know the answer to this, right? Why did Luke Thomas make so many posts about the fact that he got glasses?
I don't know, dude. That was a little bit extreme, right? He gets very focused on certain things, and I mean, his whole nose surgery with the guy. Every time I'm in like a production meeting online with him, he's wearing like a breathe right strip, and he's a total weirdo with that. But yeah, we need to get a counter at the bottom of the screen for how many times he adjusts the glasses during the show. I'm not sure what that's all about.
All right, so I'm gonna try and wrap up in the next 5 or 10 minutes because thank you so much for your time. Like I mentioned before, a couple of things that I just want to know about. I guess obviously the big announcement, Showtime and Bellator, which on the face of it seems quite interesting. I'll be honest with you, I made a video about this, just reacting to it myself, just trying to understand what kind of value Showtime can add to Bellator. And I personally, just because I follow boxing and MMA, to me, in my head, I've got Steven Espinoza as a guy that's a boxing man. and it feels like the boxing content has been slowly kind of pulled away from Showtime and more towards Fox in America.
Yeah.
And I just don't know whether Bellator coming to Showtime is Showtime really wanting the content, or it's just something that fits because they're all part of the same family. So I suppose the question I'm trying to ask is, do you see a massive uplift in Bellator's future just by this move to Showtime?
Yeah, I do. And I think first and foremost, and let's not forget, right, they're coming right from CBS Sports Network where they had a short little stint. The Viacom CBS merger really helped everyone combat related under the larger, us
Yeah.
included at CBS. And I think that sort of said, look, Viacom owned Bellator, as we all know. Why not? Why don't we really, as a company, take advantage of this and push it? So I think there's a lot to gain. Now, look, Showtime's got history. People forget that in the States of taking Strikeforce and using the CBS arm for some big events with Fedor and such, and in the original partnership with Elite XC. And look, Showtime Strikeforce on Showtime was very legit, so legit that that UFC jumped in to buy it out and eventually phase it out to kind of kill a big competitor. So there's a prestige level with it. I mean, obviously it's premium cable, so there's an extra uptick in pay for the fans, but they're not going the pay-per-view route right now. And Showtime is certainly very well critically known for their production wise, for the shoulder content. I mean, Floyd Mayweather's entire pay-per-view boxing run with All Access and all that was, hugely successful. It's a destination spot. I think it's a smart move in doing that. And I think it can add a lot of prestige to what they're doing. Maybe even a lot of money, as well, fueling in. I mean, into their future of the kind of big fights they can put on in the again, the reputation that Showtime has had of putting on really big fight events. And yes, I will say, even me having always loved of late the PBC matchmaking that they've had and the access to fighters they have. I hope that changes in a positive direction. But I think if Showtime, PBC, and Bellator are going to team up here and put their best foot forward over the next year, I mean, this is, competition wise, this makes it a major statement in the, American fight broadcasting landscape of having, two major brands on there competing against the likes of ESPN and DAZN and all that. So I think it was a very good move for them in a lot of ways. And as much as I like them on CBS Sports Network, and I still have a very close relationship of coverage through CBS Sports HQ, our live streaming network, where Bellator is heavily featured on, I think this was the smarter move in the end. So I'm expecting big things. And I think the launch of this light heavyweight tournament has been, that's an eye opener. I mean, even, even if you're Bellator critical, you got to be like, oh, I got to see this tournament. So, the smart moves here.
I think that the people or the fighters in that tournament, it's a good mix of fighters in their prime, fighters with good name value, and also fighters that aren't from the UFC, but like Nemkov, who obviously has shown just how good he is. So it's interesting to see how he matches up with the rest of the people in that tournament. So just going back to the kind of cross pollination of boxing and MMA fans that Stephen Espinoza spoke about. You mentioned a lot of Luke Thomas's fans hate it when you guys talk boxing. So how do you feel that you can kind of get that? Because I'm a fan of both sports, right? I watch the boxing in the UK on Saturday, and then straight after, I try to stay awake for the UFC, Blades and Lewis, right? So how do you feel you can kind of get everyone excited about both sports?
Well, look, I don't understand the sort of like, I'm a fan of this and nothing else.
Yeah.
Like, look, I've never watched kickboxing consistently, but if you took 10 minutes to talk up why I need to watch the next Glory kickboxing main event because it's this great matchup, bro, I'd watch it. And I'd probably enjoy it. I got Todd Grisham, the voice of Glory, always text me, bro, this great matchup's coming up. I'd probably enjoy it. Now, look, I get if any MMA fan, specifically a UFC diehard, is like, screw boxing for the disorganization, for the corruption, for the politics, all that. Yeah, bro. Like, I get that, man. I'm living in boxing. Come on. I know the dark secrets of my own family here better than anyone else. But as long as it's just that, if it's just that, that's fine. But I don't know how an MMA fan can not watch a big time boxing pay-per-view or big fight or one of those fights that's like last week where I'm like, man, if you watch this one on ESPN, you're going to see a fight of the year contender. And it was dramatic between Burchell and Valdez there. I don't see how you're not like, man, that was good stuff too. So I get that there's just sort of people that are just diehard in one area, but I think there's it's a tough tightrope to walk to pull off a show that we do where you cover both sports. I mean, even though we're doing kind of 70-30 MMA, but I think there's a future because fighting in general is kind of universal at the end of the day, even though there's different skill sets and rule sets here. And as long as we keep it to the stuff that really matters, I think, from a morning combat standpoint, I'm delighted and overjoyed by the many, many DMs I get where people are like, dude, I haven't watched boxing in 15 years, but I've now watched, 5 fights in the last 6 months because of you. So I look at it as a responsibility for the sport I love to say, all right, there's a lot of filler in the sport. There's a lot of main events on big channels that you do not need to see or know about or whatever. But if I tell you that you do need to see it, I'm looking out for you because it's worth watching. It's entertaining. So I'm hoping to see, and look, the Bellator partnership with Showtime, which has PBC boxing, I'm hoping that, there is a cross pollination there where people can realize that, good fighting is good fighting if it's well promoted, if there's good storytelling, and if the fighters themselves are of the elite level. And yeah, there's too many belts, but who cares? Let's see a good fight at the end of the day.
That's the main thing for me. If there's a good story behind it, like, I don't know if you're aware of the fight that happened over here on Saturday with Kelly and David Avanesian.
Oh yeah.
And that had a massive build up to it, and it just felt like it almost felt like a pay-per-view fight before it started last on Saturday. It was a really good card that Eddie Hearn put on, actually. But
Look, I got to give Eddie a ton of credit. I love even those mid-level cards he's putting on because there's such a commitment to storytelling, and these guys, and you're like, okay, that guy's limited, but he's flashy. He's got to prove that he's for real. And I mean, there's a lot. I wish that we in the States could bottle up the energy that Britain has that the UK in general, in Ireland as well, has for boxing, and can really just. I wish we could have the stadium feel that you guys have over there, the build up to fights, the whatever, because, boxing could be boxing again. Unfortunately, it's so far splintered on this side of the pond.
I actually, I just want to ask you something, because I always hear Americans say this, right? Oh, the UK only has a couple of sports, whereas we've got baseball, basketball, American football. And I fucking hate it when that comes up, because I disagree, because we've got loads of sports here. Just you guys, not you personally, but a lot of Americans just aren't aware of the sports that people here like. And I think that's a very lazy argument that people in boxing like to put forward. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's more than anything the disorganization that prevents boxing from putting its best foot forward. I mean, look, even in 10, 15 years ago, still the best boxing was behind pay cable on HBO and Showtime.
Yeah.
And then the really good boxing was on pay-per-view. It was on network TV at all. And even though Al Heyman and company deserve a lot of credit for bringing it back to regular to regular television in 2015, and through the evolution since then, and now Bob Arum's on ESPN with Top Rank, blah blah blah. You still don't always see the best foot forward. Not only are promoters tied to one network, but sometimes their stables aren't large enough to just coexist on that network, or even in the PBC, which I love. They got great fighters. You still got to wait a year and a half sometimes for the build to the big fight that should have happened 6 months ago. So there's a lot of big Fox main network TV fights that do not deserve to even be televised, let alone in a main event or co-main event. If boxing got its ish together and the promoters worked together, and there was one central governing body similar to a UFC, or one promoter, if somehow we could get under the house of one promoter, even just for majors, everybody can promote on their own channel the rest of the year, but 4 or 5 times a year, everyone comes together for either a big pay-per-view or a big fight on network TV. Boxing would be back, because nobody stopped liking boxing. That's the thing. Nobody did. And anytime there's a pay-per-view that matters again, why is it able to pull 2.5 million, or in Floyd, in Connor's case, 4 million, or Floyd and Manny, 4.6 million? I mean, why is it able to do that? Because people want to love boxing again, right? People want to watch the next Star Wars movie that's going to come out, whether it's good or bad, because it reminds them of something they love. It's just that boxing, there's just no organization. So there's no one's motivated to put the health of the sport before the health of their own bank account, because there's so many marauders in this wild west, and it sucks. But I do believe that, and I don't know if you have better organization in Britain. You still have rival promoters, you still have rival networks, but I feel like people there get better matchups more consistently, get better stories being told, and maybe get it shoved in their face a little bit more firmly than we do here, where it's easier to get distracted by the NBA, the NFL, college football, reality TV, blah, blah, blah. Is it an excuse? Maybe, but I think boxing has the resources now to be great. They just don't
We need to
They
get this
don't
shit
care.
together.
Dude, they don't care at the end of the day. Nobody cares,
Yeah,
bro.
yeah. No, that makes sense. I feel like
It's problem is the people that should care don't care, right? The
yeah,
fans would care if you gave them a reason to, right? I
exactly.
mean,
But
come on.
the thing that's annoying is it seems to be a trend, and you know, a lot of the time with the PBC fighters, and it might just be a boxing thing where it's almost like it's more important to win the argument, to say I've got more of the purse, than win the actual fight.
Yes.
Does that make sense? Like that's
Yeah.
almost like the more important thing here, when really you're both getting paid millions. Just split it down the middle and fight each other.
Well,
Yeah,
Al Heyman of the PBC and who's made Mayweather,
yeah,
millions upon millions. He's done great to give power back to the fighter and help them get paid more and not get taken advantage of by promoters. But the only problem with that is you have such a longer wait to build the fights, and you have a lot of boxing businessmen who are more about protecting records and, like you say, being the A side of a fight than they are about the old school way of, I want to get on mainstream TV and beat the best guy possible so that I could become a star, right? People would rather become niche stars and get rich being a niche star than getting the stardom, the money, and the glory of being the best. And again, it's a sport that takes a lot from you physically, a lot more than it'll ever give back. So could I ever argue with these guys if this is the model they want to follow for their health? I can't argue with them, right? I mean, look, at the end of the day, you want to be a boxing businessman, the structure's broken enough, you can pull that off. You don't have to fight anybody and you could still be somewhat famous. But yeah, man, what I love back in the day feel again, I try to be optimistic that it's possible, but not, I almost wonder if the sport has to really break.
yeah,
Like let's be honest about mixed martial arts, right? It wasn't that Zuffa was the first promoter to ever have success in mixed martial arts, but they took a brand that was dead, that had nobody watching it, that wasn't allowed on American TV, and they built a boxing based style of promotion and made it work and now have all the control because it was dead. Does
yeah.
boxing have to die for us to have the kind of UFC level matchmaking as consistently in your face on accessible TV that we have in MMA? I don't know. The problem is it probably won't ever die because it's still good enough 3-4 times a year that
Yeah,
people are still going to make money off of
yeah.
it.
Every couple of months, you still get an event that people are interested in. So two more questions, mate, and then we can call it. So, firstly, Deontay Wilder, the kind of whirlwind that he's been on since he lost to Tyson Fury last year, and the stuff that he's been saying. I've got two questions around it. So, firstly, what do you make of all of this back and forth with Breland and all of the excuses he's come out with? And secondly, what do you make of the fact that, to me, it just seems like he's exclusively giving these interviews to internet guys, much like myself. And I'm not saying that we're not credible, but the type of people that interview him are people that aren't willing to ask him the real
Yeah.
questions. What do you make of all of that?
Yeah, look, there's a distrust in the media on on a government political level through,
Yeah.
and also in sports as well. And no one wants to be asked the hard questions. And I think it's sad what Deontay's going through. And it's not that he's the first fighter to make excuses. In fact, somebody had a good Twitter thread where they basically shared a story of every major relevant boxing fighter going back, 75 years that had some pretty bad excuses after a loss. I get that you need to con yourself as a fighter. You need to be the best con man possible to convince yourself that you can
Yeah.
come back and that you can
Yeah.
do this and all that. So I respect that. But the amount of excuses that he's not leaning on, like full on diving into, are just bizarre. And to see the breakdown of a relationship with such a respected guy like Breland, it's sad. It's delusional. I think Deontay Wilder had a window here. And look, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt until we see him fight again. But I think he had a window with how disastrous that Fury loss was, followed by the quarantine where he wasn't going to come back and fight for little money, right? He was going to wait it out until the arenas come back to put his head down, get the right coaching, and figure out some of these giant deficiencies in his game that he's been able to cover up just by being a powerful puncher that you can't cover up on the super elite level, as he found out with Tyson Fury twice. But I don't have the confidence that he's doing that because there's such a high level of arrogance in there, and there's such a I agree with you. Floyd did the national interviews that he needed to promote his fights, but was very controlling even in those media interviews. And it was no surprise that he chose Fight Hype as like his That's the one website that I trust. You're going to get the real stuff from me at that website, and I think that's sort of where we've become in this digital age, which is, it's good because anybody can step up to the plate and, start their own podcast and get their own voice. And I credit, the Ellie Seckbacks of the world, the Marcos Viegases of Fight Hub, all these guys, yourself, who've come out here and built their own brand and hustled and done it. And that's great. But there are a lot of guys separate from that who, you're right, they're PR guys, right? They're not journalists in that regard. And it's not that every interview has to be a fight. No, I think the best interviews are the ones where you present the critical stuff, you give them a forum, maybe you counter, but then you step back and just, it is what it is. But I don't have a lot of confidence here. I mean, I think Wilder can still knock out a lot of the heavyweights and will, but I don't know if he can ever win the big one again. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I just feel like, because there's one thing making an excuse, but then there's another thing making accusations, and that's what he's done. He's accused Freeland of loads of nasty things. And if you're going to accuse someone of something, you best have the evidence or the proof to prove it. And with the people that he's talking to, they're just taking his word for it and not really picking out the holes in what he's saying. But that's just a gripe that I've got. I mean, I've made videos about it myself anyway.
Look, there's a lot of people that get a part of a fighter's team. Mm-hmm. And I'm not specifically saying this is Jay.
Oh God, what's happened? Hello? Fuck. Hello, you there?
Still here. You got me?
Sorry, yeah. Sorry about that. What happened?
I think I might have. Yeah, I might have bumped the wire. Can you hear me now? There we go.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're back.
Okay, sorry. We were talking about Wilder.
Yeah, I was just saying, I think we've seen so many fighter entourages and camps with yes men, and they can make a hell of a living being yes men. So there's not a lot of incentive for them to challenge a guy.
I think, can you still hear me? Sorry, mate. I don't know.
I still got you. I still got you here.
I don't know whose connection is. So last one then. Showtime, Bellator, yourself. What are your kind of what do you look forward to for the rest of the year and dare I say it, 2022?
I'm sorry. Can you ask that one more time? It skipped in the middle.
I said sorry. I was asking. You got Showtime and Bellator now with this partnership. You're affiliated with that network and whatnot. What do you kind of look forward to personally, on a personal level, for the rest of the year and 2022? My webcam's just gone, but continue if you can hear me. What a way to... Hello, can you hear me? Oh, God. It's definitely on my end, mate.
Okay, cool.
Sorry.
No worries.
So we'll start that last one. I'm going to have to edit this all out now. Last question. Bellator, Showtime. Obviously, new connection and whatnot, and you're part of that family. 2021 and 2022, kind of, where do you see yourself kind of over the next year or so? What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, look, great question. I want to see Morning Kombat become the brand in combat sports, but also sort of people realizing that, like, we do it differently, and I think there's a space for this. And I want to be at the giant events and the live fights, given the kind of changing the way to a certain degree that they're covered. So that's a great challenge across both sports, boxing and MMA. I look forward to. And then personally, even separate from that, look, I don't hide it. My end game is calling fights, calling boxing matches. That's what I want to do for the rest of my life. I've got little cups of coffee here and there on DAZN, on Showtime. Right now, I've got a great opportunity on a series called Ring City USA in the States on NBC Sports. And we're headed to Puerto Rico for 3 trips in the next month. And we're going to be at some cool venues across the country. And, there's nothing like the thrill of calling a fight, like the thrill of adding your voice to the soundtrack and the narrative of what these guys are doing. So I take that responsibility so seriously, and I really look forward to continuing with those opportunities, and I hope they come through Showtime or wherever. And It's a great time, man. The sky's the limit. So I appreciate you asking me that.
So that's a doing play by play effectively, or adding the color.
Yeah, doing color. I mean, I would love to do play by play as well. And there was a conversation in the beginning of this series that I might, but they ended up shifting me to color, and I love it. I love working alongside Sean Porter, a great fighter, and making him laugh just as much as challenging him and reacting to the moments. And this is a fight that showcases rising prospects, guys looking to get back in who have been at the top before, and there's a real cool, unique flair and feel to the series. And I really like what we were able to do during COVID, going to the parking lot of Freddie Roach's Wildcard Gym in LA and doing some kind of unique shots that we haven't seen before.
Good stuff. All right. Well, Brian, look, I've taken more time than we agreed before. So thank you so much for joining me. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you for your time. And I just quickly want to say technical difficulties. My TV turned off for the second time in a row. John Hathaway. I was interviewing John Hathaway. I don't know if you remember him, the UFC fighter. And it happened then. So it's my work laptop that I hook up to it. There's nothing high tech about all of this. But my webcam it all went to shit towards the end. But thank you so much for joining us. Please subscribe to the channel, like and share and all of that good stuff. And I'll catch you guys next time. Cheers.